Hello, I welcome you all in the lecture series of memory. The topic we were discussing is the forgetting, and in this topic, till date, we have discussed about the classical experiment of Hermann Ebbinghaus and related concepts and ideas. Why do we forget? Why there is a need to forget information, and what are the underlying mechanism of forgetting? Taking this lecture forward, we have to discuss about the causes of forgetting. The forgetting is could be because of just to retrieve the right information. Retrieval of right information could be dependent on the cue which is present in the environment. Now, at the time of retrieval, the failure could happen because of several reasons. If the right cue is not present, or if the information is present but the network through which one could reach to the information is damaged, then the information cannot be retrieved. There could be a number of reasons why people fail to retrieve the information. As you can see, that we are talking about the weaning out of information, which means is strongly the information which is influenced and the information which is influencing the other. So there could be the information which is influencing the other could be acting as an interference. So no longer there would be a need for the complex information also. Many a time what we do for our easiness, the information need to be simpler in form. The information which is simple and easy, encoded fast and get stored. But the information which is complex in nature requires some amount of more time and space for its consolidation. Now, the reason for forgetting, there are four popular explanations for that. One is the decay method, which we studied earlier when Hermann Ebbinghaus was talking about the decay or forgetting curve. We even discussed about the interference when we were talking about the primacy and recency effect. The information of primacy is going in our long-term memory. The information of recency is entering into our working memory. But the information which is there between the between the primacy and recency is interfering with each other. As a result, the performance decay. The people forget the information. So at the time of retrieval, they are not retrieving it correctly. So we saw the effect of interference in primacy and recency effect. We also talk about the trace degradation. Trace degradation is in contrast to trace consolidation. The information which has been consolidated, the experience which you have experienced and consolidated for future reference has degraded, because the way people are approaching towards the information for the retrieval, those connections, those networking may have weakened over a period of time as a result of updation and maintenance. Now, we also discussed about the cue related to the target. Whenever we are retrieving the information which we have to retrieve is specific in nature and it is a target. So the cue associated with the target, the cue associated with this specific information, if it is being absent, or if it is not precise, or if it is not specific enough, then the failure in retrieval happens. In many instances, what we have seen, the information is there in the system, but at the time of retrieval, the specific cue is not being provided. For instance, when you are searching a file in your computer system, you try to search the file with the name of the file. If you have saved the file with the name cargo, but when you are searching the file, you are typing the word argo, then you may not be able to retrieve it. So the specificity of the queue is required, and when there is an impairment in the queue, instead of typing cargo you are typing argo, you may not be able to retrieve the file. Similarly, the human memory system works like that. When you need to retrieve an information, the queue has to be related to the target. So let us study these four potential components, characteristics of forgetting. Lot of research has been done in this direction of decay. Decay and forgetting, decay is a part of forgetting, and Ebbinghaus in 1883 reported the forgetting curve. He reported that how the information people are forgetting and what is the rate of the forgetting. Though he was putting an emphasis upon saving method, which we studied in the previous lecture, the amount of information which is consolidated or saved, and how can we measure it. Now decay can be seen as an automatic and a spontaneous process, and the information is losing over a period of time. People do not pay attention towards the decay, which information is getting out from the system is very spontaneous in nature. This decay is happening because we cannot store huge amount of information. The amount of information which you are storing in your consolidated system requires some maintenance, and this maintenance is cost, requires some cognitive cost. This cognitive cost ensures the information which is present in the system stays for a long period of time. So when to maintain this information, maintenance can only be provided to a limited amount of information. Hence, the decay constantly happens from time to time, and it is subjective in nature. Somebody registers the information of mango with the summer. Some people registers the information of mango as a fruit which is highly used in North India. So the registry of information happens and depends on the maintenance of this information, it becomes long lasting or stays in the system. Now to test the decay, a divided attention task is being used. A divided attention task is very simple. Two different modalities are being used, or similar modality can be used. So a person has to remember the list of words. A list of words is being given to the person, and if a person has to recall, this is scale of recall, where 0% to 100% one is moving. Then in this case what we see that the recall increases, but after a certain while it starts to decrease. Why this decrease is happening? Why this distortion is happening? The distortion is happening because of the tone which is being presented simultaneously behind at the background when the person is remembering the words. So person is remembering the words while listening to a tone, and this tone is discouraging the rehearsal. This tone could be of different wavelength, could be of different decibel, and instead of tone you could add some more natural sound also. You may find similar effect. However, in addition to the natural sound, the effect seems to be more robust, more interference is being found. In the real world, we do not register information or we do not process information single. Multiple thousands of stimuli are coming together, selection is happening, execution is happening, integration is happening. This is what we have learned when we were studying about the working memory, how the central executive system is selecting the information from the visual spatial sketchpad, auditory phonological loop, and this information is passing down through episodic buffer and then getting integrated. So the tone should be different enough from the word, such as interference is eliminated. That is why white tone is being used. If a natural sound could be used, then similarity may occur. Definitely memory researchers who are using the divided attention task ensures that the similarity between the two stimuli should not be same. There should be a clear distinction. But the nature of the task is depicting, suggesting that attentional shift has to be is there. Attention need to be divided, though not consciously but unconsciously. So if we are studying in a classroom and then there is a foul smell, then we are prone to smell the foul smell present in the classroom. Our sensory system will detect this. Olfactory system will not sit in the class and shut itself down that there is no foul smell or pleasant smell in the classroom. The other type of sensory system is constantly working together, hand in hand. It is not that only visual system or auditory system is working alone. So in this divided attention task, what we have observed while rehearsing the remembering the list of words, a background tone is interfering with the rehearsal. As a result, the decay is being seen. The decay rate could be fast. Even with short time interval, the intervening activities can affect the rate of forgetting. Short time, 2 to 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes of interference. You could see how the effect was there. Now, the decay rate indicated that some amount of information is losing out from the system. Division of attention is there, which is at the background. Presence of the another sound is interfering with the target sound. As a result, people are not having time to rehearse, and when they do not have time for rehearsal, decay is there. Now we talk about the interference. What we understand with interference is that we forget because other events are interfering either with the storage or the retrieval of memories. Interference could be happening, so the other events are interfering with the storage process. So when we are moving from encoding to storage to retrieval, any event interfering here or here. So if this event 1, when it is occurring here, interfering here, then storage will not happen. Storage will not happen. Or when the event is happening here, then the retrieval will not happen. Now, interference does not assume that memory trace would fade in time. It does not indicate that if you leave the information like that, then the memory will go away from the system. No, interference is talking about the involvement of another event, either intentionally or unintentionally. So when we see a system like this, information A is there, some intervening stimuli is there, and you are trying to recall this information A. So there are two possibilities to it. This information can easily be retrieved, or this information not able to retrieved. When it is easy to retrieve, this means the information has been saved properly. When it is difficult to retrieve, then the information is difficult to retrieve because maybe the storage hasn't occurred, or while the retrieval some other form of information is interfering. So the assumption is that forgetting happens because the other mental events disrupts the normal storing and retrieving process. The mental events, so these are mental processes, mental events. These events are nothing but it's an mental events. Cognition. While rehearsing a table of 12, I ask you to recite a song or recite a poem. This will interfere with the recitation of your table itself. Now, if you see the interference, Baddeley and Hitch, who proposed the working memory concept, they tried to demonstrate this, that that interference could be of different types. So, what they proposed is that the interference could be retroactive interference or proactive interference. What does this mean? They did a very simple classical experiment where a rugby football team was there. They just simply asked the participants to recall the team whom they had played earlier in the season. Players would miss some games. So, the problem of monitoring, so they monitor the weeks elapsed from one game to the another. They had a lot of failure. So, when the person has to retrieve the information, while retrieving the information, the another event is interfering. The other event is the event which they are playing, the match currently which they are playing. So, when they have to retrieve the information from the past, and when currently what they are playing, the current information is interfering with the retrieval of the previous information. So, time did not appear to be nearly as important as number of intervening games. Here time was not important at all. But what interference is predicting, that forgetting is a result of similar events, blocking storage and retrieval. Now, when we are talking about the mental event 1 and mental event 2, then these two are different types of mental event. These are two different types. But when we are talking about the blockage of storage and retrieval, these two mental events need to be similar. So, what we people were talking about, so for instance, if you see here, initially the name of the person learned is Julie, and when the person is learning the second time, it's Judy, it's not Julie. So, what happens? The new information, Judy, is trying to interfere the retrieval of the previous stored information, which is Julie. This is known as retroactive. However, when the first learning is so robust, is so strong, that when you are doing a second learning, it is overriding the new learning. That is proactive interference. So, in one case, the new information is interfering with the previous information and leaving the impression, and in another case, the old information is strong enough and leaving the impression, blocking the new upcoming information. That is proactive interference. Such interferences has been classified into these two types, retroactive interference and proactive inhibition. What is happening in these two types of interferences? In these two types of interferences, either the previous learned information is interfering with the new incoming information and damaging it, impairing it, or the new incoming information is blocking the interference, blocking the retrieval of the previous learned information and leaving its impression. So, when does the retroactive interference is happening? When old information can't be retrieved. The old information can't be retrieved because new learning has occurred. The new learned information is interfering with the previous learned information. So, whatever you have learned in your graduation is going to intervene with the retrieval of your school knowledge, and this leaves an impression of retroactive interferences where the old information cannot be retrieved. Proactive inhibition is talking about when old information is so robust that over the recent one that it leaves the impression, and that is why in relation to memory, whenever we talk about retroactive or proactive, we use a model like conditioning, and in the conditioning model we try to depict if the safety memory, if the fear memory followed by extinction memory, which will be more robust. These are two natures of memory, two distinct structures, neural structures, and how these two distinct structures are coordinating with each other. So, in one case, when the fear memory is so strong, it is inhibiting the extinction, and when extinction memory is so strong, that is a safety memory, is so strong that it is interfering the fear memory retrieval. So, then it becomes a therapeutic intervention, effective therapeutic intervention, so that the retrieval of fear memory is not happening. Now, proactive and retroactive interference suggests that our memories are distinct in nature, very unique pattern. And what you see in these two cartoons, percentage of team names recalled correctly. You could see that from the 90%, the drop is there, it improved a little bit, but as the game is passing by, the performance is getting bad, worse and worse. You can see the difference. This is the difference. When we talk about the so this is A, retroactive, this is B, proactive. So this is A, retroactive. Now let's talk about the proactive inhibition. What we see, once you have recalled the first list of items, zero interference, 70% recall, highest. However, when there is a previous list shown to you, then there is a decrease, it decreases. What is decreasing? The recall is decreasing. Why is it decreasing? Because there is an interference, and as you see the interference, the performance is decreasing and decreasing. More information is present in the environment, the performance will come down. Now, we discussed about the decay, we discussed about the interference. Let us discuss about the trace degradation. What does trace degradation suggest? It suggests that old memory might be thought of erased or overwritten, and that is why there is no trace of consolidation is there. If there is a trace of consolidation, then the information should have been retrieved, but information is not been retrieved. This means the information which is present there has been overwritten or is not present in the system itself as well. What we studied from the classical literature of memory is that sleeping would keep learned material from being erased by other activities. What are those other activities which erases the memory? You sleep late night, unhealthy habits, unhealthy diet habits, unhealthy lifestyle, all these activities is going to affect your sleep, which eventually affects your learned material. We have been discussing earlier also, for the consolidation of the information, sleep plays a major role. Once you are in deep sleep, REM sleep, then only slow wave spindle is being generated. These slow wave spindles are activating the networking areas from the frontal cortex to the hippocampus, and then the decision starts, then the selection starts, which information need to be stored and which information need not to be stored. Trace degradation assumes that is the contrary of the memory trace. So, trace degradation is contrary to trace consolidation, and once trace consolidation is there, which means that it has become resistant to interference, When it is not resistant to interference, trace degradation can be seen. It has been overwritten or it is removed from the system as well. It explains why head trauma usually disrupts recent memory, and that is why it is suggesting trace consolidation is stored the information and is there preserved in the system. However, trace degradation is unlike the trace consolidation. The information has not been consolidated. The information is only present in your system, and when generally the head trauma happens, it disrupts the recent memories. The memory which has not been consolidated, the memory which has not been preserved in a long term memory. And that is why in any head trauma case, the working memory, short term memory is being compromised while the LTM remains intact. When we talk about this decay, when we talk about interference, and when we talk about the trace degradation, we have to understand that either as trace degradation is suggesting, the information has been rewritten or information is being lost. But some group of researchers believe that how can we be sure enough that information is not present in the system or information has been overwritten? How can we be sure enough? It may be that the queue is not there to retrieve the correct and specific information. The queue which we are using may have been impaired. So, as I was telling you earlier, if you have saved a Word file, on your computer with the word whale, then you cannot do the search with whole. Just changing this letter, one single letter, the queue impairment can occur. Why the queue impairment is happening? Because the target cannot be retrieved. The queue is not correct. Both whale and whole are 5-letter words, but the meaning is very different. So, the same target memory. So, what we talk about is retrieval queue. There is no longer links are there to the same target memory, but is associated with other memories. Earlier we discussed about the networking of the memories, how the hierarchical network model was there, and this network is providing an assistance, and this is how we store the information. The association could have been lost through extinction. Extinction is nothing but it's an unlearning phenomena, or as we call it, safety learning. You are unlearning. Unlearning what? When initially this blue square was being paired with the shock, this is resulting into threat memory. Blue square is always predicting the threat. While when this blue block is presented alone, safety memory, B alone when it is presented. So, this is forming a safety memory, this is forming a threat memory, and we try to see which is going to leave the impression. Now, in this, generally we use the Pavlovian conditioning model to study the safety memory, fear unlearning, fear learning, overlearning, etc. Another point here in the queue impairment is the queue overload. sometimes the distinct nature of the cue itself is having a lot of fan effect. The blades of the fan, if you see, when it rotates, it makes a circumference. So similarly at the center is the cue, and this cue is being associated with many other cues or many other information. So the retrieval cue becomes associated with different target memories. Not only one target memory is there, but it is being associated with many target memories. And as this happens, it is strengthened to any one target will weaken. So what is happening? One target is becoming strengthened while the others are getting weakened. Why this is happening? Because of the cues. So the nature of cue is very important for us. Then in the cue impairment, we also talk about the cue availability. Which cue is available to you? So when we are talking about the apple, we need a cue. The fruit with iron, cue availability. Now the fruit with iron could be n number of cues would be there, but while encoding this information, we are encoding it with specific details. So encoding a specificity principle proposes retrieval cues are effective only if the information connects them to the target information. So here the target information is associated with that. The target information which is stored at the time of encoding. So the process, we know that how the process is happening. So when we are talking about this time of encoding, here the target information, so whatever the hence the context at the time of encoding can also influence our ability to remember. Now when you are remembering this, if you are in a classroom, the classroom context will provide you assistance in ability to remember this item. If you are at home, then that context is going to help you to remember different nature of the information. So the encoding specificity is there, the context is playing role, and this we even discussed is in the Pavlov's dog experiment, Pavlov's classical conditioning experiment. Where we discussed about the nature of the encoding item. Then another key availability is the retrieval induced inhibition, which means that one retrieval is trying to inhibit the another retrieval. So this retrieval 1 is inhibiting the retrieval 2 and many other. So the action of making the memory trace inaccessible through suppression temporarily. Suppression means the access to the memory is blocked. So why retrieval is inducing inhibition? Because if you talk about the example like truck driver, truck mechanic, these are two distinct information, and two distinct profession is also there, 1 and 2. So when we are talking about the retrieval induced, my truck got damaged, engine is not working, then my retrieval should be truck mechanic, but instead of remembering of the truck mechanic, I am saying truck driver. is going to fix the carburetor of my engine. So the truck driver tried to inhibit the retrieval of truck mechanic. This happens every day to day life. Let us summarize what we have studied in this lecture. We studied about the unique concept and process of decay, why decay is happening, and how the presence of another stimuli is leading to towards decay. How this external additional stimuli is interfering, blocking, inhibiting the recall of the target items. While talking about the decay, we also studied that there are the different types of interference processes. One process is retroactive, another is proactive. When the new information is overriding the previous information, when the new memory is overriding the previous memory, that is retroactive interference. And when the new learning is not strong enough, robust enough, is strong enough to override the previous memory, then that is proactive interference. In this proactive interference, the previously learned information dominates the new learning. We even discussed about in this detail about the trace consolidation. Once the trace consolidation is happening, then the trace degradation does not occur. But if the information is overwritten or information is not present in the system, then this indicates the trace degradation. The information which was present there initially has degraded over a period of time. We even discussed about the last component of the forgetting was the cue impairment. When the cue is impaired and when the cue is available but is not specific, then how the forgetting is happening. We discussed these four components of forgetting: decay, interference, trace degradation, cue impairment, talking about how the forgetting is happening, how the process of forgetting is happening. So any one of these four processes is happening. With this, I will end this session, and in next class we are going to continue the lecture on forgetting. Thank you.